Join us right now from the beautiful Garden State of New Jersey. Our guest today is here to celebrate
ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni mule wanji, namaste,
please welcome to the show, Anthony Stefano. Hey, Anthony, how are you?
Merry Christmas.
I'm doing
Bienvenidos.
great.
Hi, my name is Jedley, and
I'm
this
excited to have
is
you
the
on.
Reading with Your
This is a
Kids
great
podcast.
season,
We're
a
coming
great
to you from the
time
beautiful
of year,
neighborhood
and
of
a great time
Reedville,
to
in the
delve
southwest
into
corner
some
of Boston,
faith-based,
Massachusetts.
Christmas
We're
story.
so
Tell us
delighted
about-
that
why
you
don't
are
we start with
joining us in our
Joseph's
mission to
Donkey?
help families grow
Sure.
closer
Joseph's
to
Donkey
reading.
is a Christmas
Please
book.
be
It's
sure to subscribe
about,
to the show on the
a donkey that
iHeartRadio
was
app,
purchased
on
by,
Apple Podcasts,
Saint
Spotify,
Joseph
Amazon
shortly
Music,
before his
wherever you
marriage
find
to
your
Mary.
podcast. Our guest
The
today
donkey
is
helps
Anthony
Joseph in his
Stefano.
carpentry
He is
business,
here to
as you've
celebrate
been
two
calling wood and
brand
stones,
new Christmas
and
picture
doing other
books,
kinds of things.
Joseph's
But
Donkey
he also
and the
plays
Beggar
a key role in all
and
the
the
major
Bluebird.
events recorded
Our
in
friend
what are
Leslea
known
Wahl
as the
will
infancy
also be here to
narratives, the
tell us about
Gospels.
some
So,
great
for instance,
Christmas
he
books we can read
carries,
with our
Mary
kids.
into Bethlehem, where she gives birth to
Before we
Jesus.
invite our
He
guests
takes
into
the
the studio,
Holy
we
Family
want
to
let you know
Egypt to
that
flee
this
from the
episode
evil
of
King
the
Herod.
Reading with Your Kids podcast
Later on,
is
in the
brought
book,
to
he
you by
accompanies the
Lactus
Holy
for
Family again
Santa
to
Claus
Jerusalem, where
by Janie
12-year-old
of
Jesus
Emmaus.
is lost in the
Lactus
temple and
for
then
Santa
found
Claus
again.
of Janie
So
of
it's a
Emmaus
book that
debut
introduces
picture book,
children and
illustrated
hopefully
by the
reminds
amazing
parents or
Brian
adults
Langdu.
who are
In
reading
this
these books to the
humorous and
children
endearing story, blending
about
both
some very
Christmas and
famous
Hanukkah,
stories
the little
that
girl
take
and
place
her
in the Bible
stepbrother compete
and
to
introduces
be
children
Santa
to the
best
true story of Christmas, the
ever.
Nativity,
It's a
and to this
joyful,
mysterious
engaging,
character
perfect
of
for culturally
Joseph,
blended
this
families
heroic
and delightful
character of
for
Joseph,
all
the
readers.
foster father of
Playful
Jesus.
rhymes will keep kids
You know, I'm glad you brought that up. Joseph is somebody that I don't know if he gets all the credit that he deserves.
Well, that's right. And one of the reasons for that is Joseph himself. You know, there's not one word of Joseph recorded in Scripture. We see him listening to angels and dreams and taking the Holy Family here and there and protecting them and doing all the things that a good husband and father would do. But he actually doesn't say one thing. He must have spoken, but the Bible just doesn't record any of the words that he's said. And so it's sort of hard to write a book about this great saint because anyone who's a faithful Christian doesn't want to put words into his mouth that aren't there in the Bible already. And yet he's one of the greatest saints of all time. You know, he's the husband of the Virgin Mary. He's the foster father of Jesus. He's the protector of the Holy Family. And in the Catholic Church anyway, he's the protector of the Universal Church, it's called. So he's very famous, but not a lot of books about him, and certainly not a lot of children's books about him. And that was really a big problem for me in terms of coming up with a way to write this book.
I'm wondering, and a thought that occurred to me as you were talking about the fact that Joseph is not quoted in the Bible. There are no words of Joseph recorded. Perhaps that's because his actions spoke so loudly.
I think so. I think there are no mistakes in Scripture, according to those of us who believe in the Bible and who are faithful Christians. God doesn't make any mistakes. He gives us the information we need, So there's probably a teaching lesson involved here. The idea that you don't have to talk a lot to get a lot of things done. Here he is, one of the most important figures in the Bible, and there's not one recorded word. And yet we see very clearly that he's a very strong man, that he's a very faithful man, that he's a very hardworking man, that he's very humble. All these qualities come through without him having to say anything. And that's a lesson for all of us today. We live in a very, very noisy world, don't we? And we're always so anxious to speak and to get, to tell everybody what we think. And here it is, one of the greatest people who ever lived, hardly said a word that we know of anyway. And yet he's still remembered today. People are writing books about him.
And I think one of the great examples that St. Joseph leaves us, especially for kids, is that idea of having the strength to go against what's popular, what's thought to be cool. Joseph, there was that scandal. The woman he was engaged to be married to, it comes up pregnant, but he doesn't abandon her.
Yes, and again, another message for us in our lives. We expect so many things. We expect things to go our way. We plan so much. We've got all these day planners and schedulers on our smartphones, and if something goes wrong, if something messes up the schedule, if something comes along that we weren't planning on, or that upsets us or puts us outside of our comfort zone, we get all anxiety ridden. And here's a person who reacted to this, like you just said. It's a tremendous scandal. It's incredible. The woman you love, the woman you think is so pure, all of a sudden she's pregnant, and there's no human explanation. And yet he listened when he was given inspiration from an angel about the truth of what happened. He obediently followed what the angel said, and rolled with the punches, so to speak, and got himself into a very dangerous situation, being chased by Herod, this evil king who had murdered all his sons and who was responsible for murdering so many children. He put himself at odds with this tremendous enemy, and yet he came out successful in the end, just by being obedient and humble.
Yeah. Would have been so much easier for him to just walk away.
Sure. Yeah, he was a carpenter. He never had a problem before, presumably. He could have just been a very successful, Jewish person of that time. Yeah. But he plunged right into the greatest story of all time, really.
Yeah. Interesting that you chose the character of a donkey to kind of tell this story.
Yeah, well, there are two reasons for that. One of them was actually a reason we just spoke about, which is that, as a Christian person who believes in the Bible, I don't want to put words into the mouth of St. Joseph that are fictional, but with a fictional donkey who's speaking and thinking, I could put whatever I want into his mind and whatever he says, I can make him say whatever I want, as long as it's theologically correct and sticks to the meaning of what the Bible is trying to convey. But I get around that problem of putting words into St. Joseph's mouth, so that's one reason. The second reason is the reason why we put animals in children's books in the first place, and that is that animals are more accessible to children. Children are not intimidated by animals the way they're intimidated by adults. Adults are authority figures, as well they should be, but sometimes that puts a screen up between the child and the book if the book is about adults. But with an animal like a donkey or a bird or a sheep or any number of other animals that I've written about in the past, children fall in love with those characters immediately. So they are able to immediately enter into the book, fall in love with the characters, and it's just a better way of learning.
Speaking of animals that kids can fall in love with, your other Christmas book this year, The Beggar and the Bluebird. Tell us a little bit about this bluebird.
Sure. Well, The Beggar and the Bluebird is kind of like a modern fairy tale, a Christian fairy tale, but it's not even very overtly Christian. It's in the tradition of Hans Christian Andersen and the Grimm brothers. It tells a story of a little bird whose flight southward for the winter keeps getting delayed because of the strange requests of a local street beggar. This beggar asks the bird to fly on these various errands of mercy for him, delivering bread to a homeless man, delivering money to a widow with children, delivering a little gold cross to a sick boy in the hospital. And as a result of performing these acts of mercy, these acts of kindness, the bluebird gets caught in a winter blizzard, this tremendous snowstorm, and it seems like he's going to die, like he's going to freeze to death, until a surprise ending reveals, and I think we could say it here, that the street beggar is not really a beggar, but is really an angel of God.
Wow. So for listening and doing the work of God, the bluebird is saved.
That's right. He and again, this is one of those situations where he doesn't want to do these things. He wants to fly south. He knows the snowstorm is blowing in, and he knows that he might freeze. So he's forced to exercise this tremendous virtue of courage, which is very, very important for children and adults to learn. And he puts himself in danger and harm's way in order to do the right thing. And at the end, he is saved because he's done those things.
Yeah. I think that's an important lesson for kids, this idea that we really need to have courage to do the right thing. Where kids are in school and we need our kids to have the courage to stand up to say something when they see somebody being bullied. When they see somebody be excluded, they need to have the courage to stand up and include those persons and to show everybody that they encounter with the love and the respect that Jesus, that God asks us to show everyone.
That's right. And I don't think we can underestimate or overestimate, the value of this virtue of courage. I think that fear is the biggest problem we have in society, and not just children, adults. We are afraid of everything. We are afraid not just of bullies, and there are bullies in the business world too, as you know. Mm-hmm. We're afraid because of money problems. We're afraid because of our bills. We're afraid because of our problems at our job. We're afraid for our families and our children. We're afraid because of health problems. We're afraid because of problems we may be having in our marriage. Children are afraid when they go to a new grade, a new class, a new neighborhood, when their grandparent gets sick or dies. And most of all, people are just afraid that they don't have what it takes to overcome all the problems that they have to face, especially at a very hectic, distracting time like Christmas. And so, yes, this idea that we can overcome these problems, we can get through these problems if we, not on our own, but if we are able to access this power source of the universe, if we're able to access God, who can do all things, then we can overcome our problems. We may not end our suffering. God may not put an end to our suffering, but he will get us through our suffering, get us through our fear. And this is a tremendous lesson to teach children early on, because they're going to have to deal with it their whole lives.
Yeah. The stress the kids are under, we're talking about most likely, the audience for The Beggar and the Bluebird, most likely young kids, but pretty soon those really young kids are going to be in middle school. They're going to have a device in their pocket. They're going to be worried and afraid that they're not getting enough likes on the latest picture that they put up on Instagram.
Oh boy, and this is a big problem for parents today, because we really are. This is going to lead me on to a little bit of a tangent, but we really are becoming a kind of race of cyborgs, half man, half machine. These smartphones that we have become literally extensions of ourselves. I was reading an article the other day. The average American checks his smartphone between 100 and 200 times a day. Now that's like every 5 or 10 minutes. We're checking those phones and checking to see if we've got likes on Instagram and Facebook, etc. They've become extensions of ourself, digital extensions of our flesh and blood self. We really are half man, half computer, if you look at them as extensions with these little portals and connections. And, and this is one of the reasons why your show is so amazing, because reading books to your children at an early age, this is one of the most important things to combat this whole transformation of the human being to half human, half machine. Reading to children, reading with children strengthens those human connections, those family connections of love, and strengthens our own cognitive development, as opposed to, relying on these computers and these digital devices for everything. So I know it's a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's very important.
Well, I'm happy that you did that. And one of the neat things that I experience here on the show is oftentimes when somebody is speaking, when a guest is speaking, and I just have these flashes, these images. And as you were speaking about the importance of sitting down and reading with our kids, I had this image of Joseph cuddling with Jesus, and not necessarily reading a picture book, but just telling stories about family, telling stories about life. And what a wonderful moment that must have been.
Well, I think that you had a flash, an insight into what really did happen, because this tradition of reading books or reciting books from memory out loud is an ancient tradition. Going back to the Greeks, before the Greeks and Homer, people would memorize these long epic poems and read them out loud, say them out loud. And the ancients were really ahead of us in this area, because, we found in recent studies that have been done that this process of reading aloud to children it really is a great boost to the cognitive development of young people. It really helps develop their brain, the connection between the ears and the mouth and the voice and the heart and the mind and the brain. All those connections are strengthened, not to mention the tremendous boost to the, vocabulary and language skills. So it's one of the most important things. And I do think Joseph did that with Jesus, certainly with Scripture, with the Bible at that time. And we should do that more and more. So kudos to you for the insight that you had on your show.
Well, thank you very much. I do appreciate that. We've long talked here on the podcast and reminding parents that they are their child's first and most important teacher. And one of the best ways to instill the values that you hold dear with your kids is by sitting down and reading books that share and celebrate your values.
That's absolutely right. It's there's another expression in the Christian expression that the family is the first church. Mm-hmm. So what happens between the ages of 0 and 6 or 7 is perhaps the most important time in a children's life to their cognitive development, to the beliefs that they form later on, and what you read to them sticks. Man, I'll remember things that my father or my mother said to me or read to me back when I was 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 years old. I remember rhyming books from back then. It will stay with you your whole life. And maybe you'll drift away from the values that you're given at that age during your teenage years and your 20s, but they're there. And you can always come back to them. But you can't come back to them if they weren't put there in the first place. Yeah. So that's one of the most important things parents can do is read these kinds of books with with these kinds of strong family values to the children. Yeah. And it is so much more effective to teach through stories, to teach through conversations about stories than it is to lecture kids. We know that because that's how Jesus taught. Yes, Jesus used parables, and we believe he's God. Now, and that's a very, very deep and profound question. Why do we learn best through stories? Why did Jesus use stories? The human being is wired to be interested in stories. Our lives are stories. We have a beginning, we have a middle, we have an end. The life of the universe is a beginning, a middle, and an end, we believe. So it's just wired into our DNA to be interested in stories. And, there's another expression, I don't know who said it, but that there's a road that leads directly from the eye to the heart that does not pass through the brain. And likewise, there's a road that leads from the ear to the heart that does not go through the brain. In other words, when children hear things and they see things and they imagine things in a story, they can learn important truths without having to analyze it. Mm-hmm. So it's different than being in a class and listening to a lecture or an analysis of an idea. When we see images and hear things that convey these images, we can learn them immediately, instantaneously. They can make an impression on our heart without us having to really understand necessarily every single thing that they mean. Mm-hmm. And that's what these books are for. Children see the beautiful illustrations, they hear the words being read to them, and without knowing it, without understanding it in their brain, they learn certain lessons in their heart that stay with them forever. Yeah. Well, Anthony, I know people are going to want to know where they can go to find out more about Joseph's donkey and find out more about the Beggar and the Bluebird and also find out more about you. Well, I'm very blessed. I'm very lucky. My books are all around. I've had very good distribution for a long, long time. So the books are at Barnes and Nobles. They're on Amazon.com. They're in Christian bookstores. You can get them from these particular books have been published by Sophia Institute Press. You can go directly to them. My website, I don't sell books on my website, but people could learn more about me and all the other books I've written. There's like 25 of them. If they don't mind this long Italian name, www.anthonydestefano.com, and they'll find everything there. Awesome. We've had a really wonderful time speaking about the two new books from Sophia. It's Joseph's Donkey and The Beggar and the Bluebird, and we've been speaking with the author, Anthony DeStefano. Hey, Anthony, thanks so much for being with us. Oh, thank you so much. What a pleasure. Great interview. Thank you, Ted.
Before we invite Leslea Wahl back into the studio, we want to invite you to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, at Gently Magic on Twitter. And of course, you can go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com, sign up for our free newsletter, and also use that contact button if you have any suggestions or you just want to say hi. Joining us once again from the great state of Colorado, our guest today is one of our favorite authors. She is Leslea Wahl. She's here to share with us some great suggestions of books that we can read with our young kids around Christmas time. Hey, Leslea, welcome back.
Thanks for having me again.
We love having you on. I love discovering all the great books, a lot of great faith-based books that you're sharing with us. And what a great time for a faith-based book, but Christmas.
Exactly. And these are all about different holidays around Christmas. And of course, we have, very many wonderful books about the actual story of Christmas, but these all have different occur at different times through the holiday season. So it's kind of a little different twist on it.
Yeah, I love learning about holidays and festivals because, it's a great way to make life fun. Who doesn't love a great party and festival?
Exactly.
Yeah. So what's the first book?
Okay, so the first one's called The St. Nicholas Day Snow by Charlotte Riggle. Now, this storybook has a lot of cool elements to it. There's a sweet story about a sleepover of two friends, and through this story, we get to hear about the real St. Nicholas and the legends that surround him. The story takes place on December 5th and 6th, early in the season, and as the girls prepare to celebrate St. Nicholas Day, they place their shoes outside and hope that they'll be filled with goodies in the morning. The really special thing about this book is the illustrations. They really add so much. In fact, they not only bring to life the story with unique characteristics of the characters, but there's a really cool side story that's shown just through the pictures down in the corner, and some historical elements. So on each page, there's an image showing the real reason why Elizabeth is spending the night with her friend. And it's a really touching little story. And then there's also illustrations of different St. Nicholas parishes around the world. Ooh. And then in the back of the book, the author has some great information about St. Nicholas Day, why it's celebrated, a bit of the history about the real saint, and how the beloved figure morphed into the legend of Santa Claus. So there's a lot going on in this book.
That's very, very cool. I love that idea of seeing the different churches named for St. Nicholas at the back of the book. One of the things that I think I don't know any church or Catholic school that does this, but I think it'd be really neat to, develop relationships with St. Nicholas School in Boston, maybe with St. Nicholas School in Ireland or Australia or Africa, wherever they might be. That may be a great way to connect and get kids writing and just helping them understand that you're part of this really big, beautiful family.
That's a great idea. And to learn about different cultures and stuff, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah. And that, I think, is really important, that the whole idea of, we share this faith, but we have different cultures. So some of the traditions and some of the ways that we celebrate the same holiday might look different. It doesn't make them wrong. It's just different.
Yeah, it's very true. That's why it was kind of fun to learn about some of these different traditions in different countries when I was researching these books.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. And is there particular parts of the world where kids put their shoes out for St. Nicholas to fill them?
Now, that one I wasn't sure. I know, actually, when my kids were in a Catholic school, some of the kids talked about doing that, which I had never heard about. So I'm not sure exactly where that one is from.
Well, I know my my kids caused a little bit of a controversy. And when my son was in kindergarten, we celebrate Christmas, of course, but we also celebrate Dia de los Reyes, which is the Feast of the Epiphany. And in Latin American countries, especially Puerto Rico, kids will fill up a shoebox full of grass or hay so that the camels that are carrying the magi around can have a snack. And then to say thank you, the kings will leave a gift in the shoebox. And
wow.
When my son
I hadn't
brought
heard
in,
of that one. That's so neat.
when my son brought in his gift that was in the shoebox, all the other parents called us going, "What do you mean we got to get our kids another gift? What's going on?"
Exactly. Thanks a lot. That's cute.
What's the next book?
The next one's called Lucia Morning in Sweden by Reideker. So I'll spell that. It's EYARYDAKER. And so this story is about the celebration in Sweden of St. Lucia Day. And I hadn't heard much about this special day before, but this celebration is in preparation for Christmas. And it's a fun tradition of food, song, and candles. And that's all described in this little picture book about a family who's celebrating it. But the author gives some great description and history of the events. And she also includes some recipes, crafts, and songs. So if you want to, bring this one to your family too, that is a great way to do it. So this celebration centers around a legend about a woman in Sweden who was dressed in white, and she was standing at the bow of a boat, and she crossed this lake in Sweden to bring food to some people on the other side who were dying of hunger during a famine. So tradition has it that she was wearing white and had this wreath in her hair crowned with lighted candles. So to this day, December 13th is one of the high points of the Christmas season in Sweden, and candles are lit to bear the light against the darkness as Lucia did. Ooh. So in the story, it's early in the morning on December 13th, and the oldest daughter in the family has the privilege of being the Lucia that year. She wears a long white gown, and she and her siblings wake their parents, offering them coffee, special breakfast of buns and ginger snaps. So that one's a good one because you get your kids to just bring you breakfast in bed. So
yeah, not bad until you go downstairs and see what the kitchen looks like.
True. Right.
All right. Well, what's book number 3?
And then the next one's called 9 Days to Christmas. A story of Mexico by Marie Hall Etz. So this picture book is actually a little older, and it was redone recently with the hardcover version, and it actually won a 1960 Caldecott Award. But it's the story of a little girl named Cici as she prepares for her first Las Posadas, a traditional Mexican 9-day series of Yuletide celebrations. So she this year she gets to lead the candlelight procession that reenacts Mary and Joseph's trek to Bethlehem. And then the Posada finishes with a special party and her very first piñata. So that one's neat.
Yeah.
And I have one more. I usually only do 3, but I do have a 4th one if you have time.
Excellent. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. And this one's called Hooray for Three Kings Day by Lori Marie Carlson. And this is a story about 3 siblings and their Three Kings Day celebration. So the author tells it this is a special popular holiday with people often with Latin heritage, and it begins on the evening of January 5th. Now, the author explains that in different countries, they celebrate it a little differently, as you were mentioning before. And she incorporates several different traditions into this book. And but the Three Kings Day, these 3 siblings dress as the 3 wise men, and they watch a procession in their town of the Holy Family. And then they journey from door to door, asking if anyone has seen the baby Jesus, just like the wise men did. Mm-hmm. And finally, the kids go home, and then the next day they have this giant feast and enjoy the 12th night after Christmas together.
Neat.
Yeah.
You know, the wise men brought me and my wife a very, very special gift one Three Kings Day.
Oh, really?
My daughter.
Oh, sweet.
Yes.
So you'll always remember that.
Absolutely.
Celebration.
Absolutely. Imagine how much fun it would be to celebrate all of those holidays. Boy, you'd be busy the whole month of December.
What a special month it would be.
Yeah. And this would be a great year to do it since the supply chain is going to be, keeping all the gifts that we want our kids to, that we want to buy our kids. It's out off the coast of California trying to get docked. So forget that. Just do these celebrations.
Exactly. There'll be more fun probably anyway.
Hey, Leslea, please tell everybody where they can go to find out about your fantastic books.
Sure. You can find my adventurous mysteries at lesliewahl.com or at catholicteenbooks.com.
Yeah. And you definitely want to check out our archives and just search Leslie's name to, she's been on the show talking about her different novels, and they're exceptional. And you definitely want to check them out. Some great reads that you can experience with your older kids.
Yeah, they'd be great for the new year.
Yeah. Leslea, thank you so much for being back with us.
Thanks again for having me.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Claude Lawson. She'll be here to celebrate the power of choice, a teen's guide to finding success. What a great gift to give to your kids. That's the next episode of the podcast. Hey, if you are the author of a fantastic children's book and would love to tell the world all about it, we'd love to help you. Please go to readingwithyourkids.com, click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page, and scroll on down to learn how you can be a guest, how you can submit your book to our Certified Great Read panel, and how you can take part in our monthly promotion program. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to thank our guest, Leslea Wahl. She always has some great suggestions for us. We always love having her back here on the podcast. Of course, I want to thank Anthony Stefano. Be sure to check out Joseph's Donkey and The Beggar and The Bluebird. I also want to thank our sponsor, Janie Emmaus. Check out Lacquers for Santa. I want to thank my team, Alejandra Doherty, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.